Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Grobe in Brussels. When Donald Trump took office 4 years ago, he deplored the divisions in society and railed against American carnage. This week, his strangely dark vision became reality. After whipping his cult of followers into a frenzy by feeding them conspiracy theories, a pro-Trump mob stormed Capitol Hill, the heart of American democracy. Inside Congress, lawmakers were about to certify Joe Biden's victory and Trump's loss, something Trump seems unable to accept, behaving like a petulant 3-year-old. European leaders reacted with shock and disbelief and the realization that Trump has not understood the nature of his job.
A fundamental rule of democracy is that after elections there are winners and losers. Both have to play their role with decency and responsibility so that democracy itself remains the winner. President Trump regrettably has not conceded his defeat since November.
The scenes we have seen are the result of lies and more lies, of divisiveness and democracy thwarting, of hatred and hatred incitement, even from the highest levels. This is a historic turning point for the United States, and this is an attack on liberal democracy in general. How embarrassing for Trump to be so lectured by his soon-to-be fellow ex-leaders on the world stage. If for nothing else, the outgoing occupant of the White House inspired some of his colleagues to a firm message of support to, well, Trump's opponents.
Aujourd'hui, la France.
Today, France stands strongly, fervently and resolutely with the American people and with all the people who want to choose their leaders and decide on their fate and lives through the democratic and free choice that are elections. We will not yield an iota to the violence of the few who challenge that. In just 2 more weeks, the era Trump will be over. He will leave behind him a nation whose divisions he deepened, whose racial tensions he stoked, and whose economic inequalities he ignored. But what about the anger, the grievances, the hatred he sowed? Will they live on? Joining me now is Nathalie Loiseau, a Liberal member of the European Parliament and a former diplomat and minister in France. Welcome to the program.
Hello.
So, you know America very well. What were your thoughts when you saw these pictures from Capitol Hill? What did you feel?
Well, I was appalled. I spent 5 years in Washington, D.C. I had never imagined that such a scene would happen. And at the same time, I was not surprised because Donald Trump had said that something would happen on January the 6th. And we know he's cynical. We know he was looking for chaos. And he went through.
The guardrails of American democracy held, barely. But let's not forget that Trump has millions of supporters and still many enablers in Congress. What is going to happen with this insurrectionary energy once he leaves office?
Indeed, it's a very divided society that Joe Biden is going to look upon. I fear that it's not the end of the story. There are still 13 days to go before the start of the Biden presidency. There will still be some protests. 4 casualties is a lot. And I suspect that violence is not going to end so easily.
You mentioned, Tim, the new president, Joe Biden. He will be left with the monumental task of healing the nation. What can he actually do?
I think he's the right man. He has experience. He's a moderate, so he will not put more heat. He will try to cool it down and to address all major concerns, because this takes place in a very specific context of the pandemic, of a looming economic crisis. So he will have a lot on his plate, probably a lot of domestic politics to focus about, and not that much about foreign policy, I suspect.
And finally, what is the lesson to be learned here for European democracies? Is there a risk that we reach this level of division and hatred as in the United States?
Well, we reached it already in the past. In the last century, I remember 1934, 6th of February, there were riots in front of the French National Assembly, looking very much the same as the one we are witnessing now. We have to be aware that democracy is not a given. We have to protect it. We have to fight for it. Populism is not entertaining. Is not an anecdote. It is threatening, it is dangerous, and we have to fight against it.
All right, Nathalie Loiseau, member of the European Parliament and the former French diplomat and minister. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
The political drama in the United States pushed the COVID situation out of the headlines for a day or two. Soon it will again be vaccinations and lockdowns that dominate the discussions. The Czech Republic is among those countries that reimposed stricter measures recently due to a surge in infections, and that included closing bars and restaurants. As a consequence, people in Prague protested by putting candles in beer glasses and set them in a line stretching about a kilometer from the city center to government buildings. The government called the measures frustrating but necessary. But businesses were promised to be compensated for their losses. No need to storm the parliament here. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thank you for watching. Have an excellent week.